Imagine for a second that you were just sitting in your favorite armchair.
Yeah.
Right? And you're reading a classic novel.
Yeah, just totally relaxed.
Exactly. You're holding this worn copy of some grand, sprawling masterpiece that you know incredibly well. You're turning the pages, totally engrossed in, the familiar heroes, the intricate architecture of these ancient courtyards, the drama, the epic journeys.
It's a whole world you're lost in.
Right. Now, what if I told you that you aren't actually reading a story? What if, hiding in plain sight behind the poetry, the teenage romance, and the mythical sword fights, there's this highly encrypted, brutally precise biological survival manual?
I mean, it sounds crazy when you say it like that.
It does. But what if the heroes you're rooting for, the castles they live in, and the demons they fight are actually step-by-step actionable blueprints for reversing your own cellular aging, like hacking your autonomic nervous system and completely remodeling your biological energy?
It really sounds utterly fantastical when you first encounter the premise. I mean, the instinct is just to dismiss it as some over-intellectualized conspiracy theory, right?
Oh, absolutely. Like seeing patterns in clouds.
Exactly. Literary pareidolia, where we see things that aren't really there. But, well, when you begin to rigorously cross-reference the historical context, the explicit vocabulary of traditional Chinese medicine, and the internal structures of these texts, the fiction just falls away.
It just drops off entirely.
Yeah. And what remains is this stunning reality of how ancient scholars preserve their absolute most advanced biological and biophysical sciences.
And today's deep dive is venturing into that exact hidden landscape. We have a massive, really dense stack of sources today that decode classical Chinese literature.
Some of the greatest hits of the culture, really.
Right. We're specifically looking at the golden age of Tang Dynasty poetry, the massive, structurally complex, tragic novel Dream of the Red Chamber, and the epic mythical adventure Journey to the West.
3 totally different genres.
3 different genres, yeah. And the central thesis of our sources argues that these aren't just, cultural masterpieces meant for aesthetic enjoyment. They are strict, meticulous blueprints for Taoist internal alchemy. They are literal physiological manuals.
But to really grasp the gravity of this, I think we first have to address the immediate glaring historical question, which is, why encode this?
Right, why the secrecy?
Yeah, if you possess profound physiological knowledge about cellular longevity, nervous system regulation, and bioenergetic mapping, why dress it up as a story about a magical monkey or a declining aristocratic family living in a lavish garden?
Why not just write a medical textbook that states the facts plainly? That is exactly where my mind goes first.
That's the logical question.
Yeah, if I figure out the definitive biological mechanism for anti-aging or perfect nervous system regulation, I am publishing a peer-reviewed paper immediately. I'm not writing a cryptic poem about autumn leaves and hoping someone 1,000 years from now figures out the metaphor.
Well, you have to deeply consider the historical and political environment these scholars were operating within. We are talking about eras characterized by really strict social, political, and spiritual taboos.
Heavy censorship, basically.
Oh, lethal censorship. It was not the exception, it was the baseline norm. Regime changes in ancient China frequently resulted in the mass burning of texts.
Wow, just wiping the slate clean.
Exactly. And the execution of thousands of scholars to erase the intellectual legacy of the previous dynasty. But beyond just the political danger, there was a profound philosophical barrier here, too.
What do you mean by philosophical barrier?
So in the Taoist tradition, this level of transformative physiological knowledge, what they called internal alchemy, or Naiden, was considered intensely powerful and inherently dangerous.
Dangerous in what sense, though? Like, biologically dangerous if you do the breathing exercises wrong?
Yeah, both biologically and socially. Biologically, because if you forcibly manipulate your nervous system and internal energy without the proper psychological grounding, you can cause severe psychosomatic damage.
Oh, like overloading a circuit.
Perfectly said. We actually see this today, right? With people hyperventilating in modern breathwork classes and triggering massive panic attacks.
Oh, yeah, totally. Pushing too hard.
Right. But socially, this knowledge was viewed as a technology of profound empowerment. It frees the individual from sickness, from reliance on external structures, from the fear of mortality itself.
That makes them hard to control.
Exactly. The ancient masters believed that handing this literal power over life and death to someone who hadn't proven their moral discipline, their patience, and their psychological stability well, that was wildly irresponsible.
So it's essentially a filtration system.
That's exactly what it is. To survive the centuries, to pass this knowledge down through endless generations of war, famine, and political upheaval, they couldn't write it down plainly.
They'd be killed or the books would be burned.
Right. So they had to become absolute masters of literary cryptography. They embedded the science into the culture itself, weaving the blueprints into the very DNA of the folklore, the poetry, and the popular entertainment of the day.
The culture became the Trojan horse for the biophysics.
A perfect way to put it.
They hid the ultimate biohacking manuals in the pop culture of the time. It's brilliant, really, because a regime might burn a medical text, but they aren't going to burn a beloved poem that literally every child has memorized.
It's hiding in plain sight.
So here is our roadmap for today to guide you through this hidden internal landscape. First, we will look at how a simple, familiar poem is actually a highly specific mechanism for respiratory transformation.
Starting small, with the breath.
Exactly. Then we will walk through a famous literary garden that perfectly maps out our hidden meridian network. Finally, we will learn how a mythical monkey teaches us to build an internal particle accelerator.
Yes, an actual internal particle accelerator.
Oh, it sounds wild. So let's unpack this.
But before we dissect the literature, I think we need to precisely define what our sources mean by Taoist internal alchemy, or Naden.
Yeah, let's clear that up, because the term alchemy carries a lot of unfortunate historical baggage in the West, right?
Oh, definitely. It usually conjures up images of a medieval European wizard in a damp cave, mixing sulfur and mercury in a boiling cauldron, obsessively trying to turn literal lead into literal gold.
Right, like mixing toxic chemicals,
Yeah.
the external alchemy with the sources called Waden, lots of heavy metals, a lot of smoke. And historically, a lot of emperors accidentally poisoning themselves with mercury elixirs trying to live forever.
Precisely. That was the flawed external approach. But internal alchemy, Naden, is fundamentally different in its operational theater. It completely discards the external cauldron and the heavy metals.
So what's the laboratory then?
The human body itself. It posits that the body is the laboratory, the crucible, and the raw material. In plain physiological language, it is a systematic, highly rigorous method of remodeling the human nervous system.
Remodeling the nervous system.
Okay. It's about optimizing the flow of biological energy, what they called ki, to reverse the physical effects of entropy, heal cellular damage, and achieve maximum physical longevity.
It's applied biophysics, basically, cloaked in metaphor.
That's exactly it.
And the key to unlocking this cloaked biophysics starts with the very language they used. The sources point out this fascinating, almost hidden in plain sight detail regarding the actual Chinese character for the word poetry itself.
This is one of my favorite parts of the research.
It's so cool. So the character is pronounced she. Now, if you break down the visual etymological components of this written character, the left side is the radical for speech or words.
Which is entirely logical for poetry, right?
Yeah.
It is fundamentally a spoken art form rooted in oral tradition.
Right. But the right side of the character is where the encrypted biological map begins to reveal itself. The right side is composed of components that translate literally to an inch of earth.
Yes.
So if you read the components literally, poetry is speech plus an inch of earth.
And this is exactly where we must shift from linguistics to Taoist anatomy. In the ancient esoteric mapping of the human body, they utilized specific geographical and spatial terms to designate biological centers.
So it's a map.
Yeah. An inch of earth is not just a poetic flourish. It is a highly specific, standardized code phrase that precisely corresponds to the human heart.
Okay, I have to stop you there and play devil's advocate for a second. Isn't an inch of earth just a common idiom, like a colloquialism?
A fair pushback.
How do our sources definitively prove that this specific stroke arrangement in the word poetry translates perfectly to the cardiovascular center of the human body, rather than just being a coincidence of ancient writing?
It's a vital question. The sources defend this by cross-referencing the character with definitive medical and alchemical texts from the exact same era, such as the Yellow Emperor's Inner Classic and later Naden treatises.
Okay, so they look at the medical dictionaries of the time.
Exactly. In these texts, the body is mapped using the 5 elements theory. The heart is associated with the element of fire, but the space it occupies, the central foundational vessel of the upper body's spiritual energy, is frequently explicitly referred to as the square inch or the inch of earth.
Ah, I see.
Yeah, when you read the alchemical manuals, instructions to focus the mind on the inch of earth are universally understood by practitioners as directing awareness straight to the heart center.
Okay, so the linguistic link is totally corroborated by the medical texts of the time, which means when we put those two halves of the character together, the literal hidden translation of the word poetry isn't just beautiful rhyming writing.
No, it's not.
It translates anatomically to heart speech.
Precisely. Poetry is the direct, unmediated language of the heart. In traditional Chinese medicine, the heart isn't just a mechanical pump for blood. It is considered the internal monarch, the emperor of the biological kingdom.
The boss of the body.
Yeah. It houses the shen, the spirit or the mind. It dictates the rhythm, the flow, and the overall harmony of the entire physiological system.
That makes sense.
Therefore, poetry, with its specific metric constraints, its tonal variations, and its rhythmic breathing requirements, was designed as the specific frequency, the exact code, used to communicate directly with the body's internal monarch.
That reframes the entire concept of art consumption for me. When you read classical poetry aloud, you aren't just engaging in an intellectual exercise, you are executing a direct physiological command to your cardiovascular system.
And if we bridge this ancient concept with modern neuroscience and cardiology, the validation is actually incredibly striking.
How so?
Today, we have an entire field of study dedicated to heart rate variability, or HRV. We now have hard, empirical data proving that specific breathing rhythms, specific emotional valences, and even the vocal recitation of certain rhythmic phrases can directly alter the electrical pacing of the sinoatrial node in the heart.
Oh, you're talking about how exhaling longer than you inhale increases parasympathetic tone, slowing the heart rate down.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Modern science is observing with EKG machines and biofeedback monitors what these ancient authors mapped out centuries ago using the structure of written syllables.
They were hacking the nervous system with words.
Right. They didn't have wearable tech, so they used the constraints of the poetic form to force the reader into a specific respiratory ratio. You are literally tuning your heart's electrical frequency by reading the poem aloud with the intended meter.
It's an acoustic pacemaker. But it doesn't stop at the heart, does it? If poetry is the language of the heart, how does it command the rest of the biological kingdom? How does it control, say, the lungs and the baseline metabolic rate?
That leads us directly to our first major literary decryption, the specific mechanism of breathing and energy transformation hidden in Tang Dynasty poetry.
Right. Tang poetry is widely considered the absolute zenith of Chinese literature. And our source material focuses intensely on one very specific, universally recognized example, a short poem called Mountain Journey by the legendary 9th century poet Du Mu.
A true classic.
Yeah. Let's strip away the alchemy for a second and look at the surface narrative, because it's a poem almost everyone familiar with the literature knows by heart.
Just the literal story of it.
Right. The poem is essentially a fleeting snapshot of a traveler in late autumn. He is riding in a horse-drawn carriage up a winding, rocky mountain path. It's getting late, the air is crisp, and he is so utterly captivated by the beauty of the maple leaves turning crimson in the twilight that he actually halts his carriage just to sit and admire the woods.
It's incredibly peaceful.
It's a purely aesthetic moment of nature appreciation, just a beautiful autumn evening.
It is a flawless, beautiful image on the surface. But according to the physiological blueprints we are decoding, that carriage isn't made of wood and iron, and those aren't literal maple leaves.
Okay, here we go.
Let's look closely at the critical third line of the poem. Stopping the carriage to sit and admire the maple woods at twilight. In the precise, encrypted vocabulary of internal alchemy, stopping the carriage is not a narrative event.
It's an instruction.
It is a direct imperative command to the autonomic nervous system.
So the carriage represents our breathing.
Yes. Think about the mechanical reality of a horse-drawn carriage on a mountain road. It is a continuous, rhythmic, heaving up and down motion.
Bumping along.
Exactly. This perfectly represents the continuous, unconscious, mechanical cycle of external respiration. Our physical lungs expanding and contracting, our chest heaving up and down.
I see the connection.
Stopping the carriage is the explicit instruction to enter a highly advanced, deeply altered physiological state known in Taoist practice as zixi.
Okay, we need to pause and be extremely careful here, because I know exactly what you were thinking as you listened to this. Stop my breathing. Like, pinch my nose and hold my breath until I pass out.
Right, which sounds terrible.
That sounds like the exact opposite of health. That sounds incredibly stressful and dangerous.
It would be. And the sources are hypervigilant about making this distinction. Zixi is absolutely not the forced mechanical holding of the breath.
It's no.
When you hold your breath forcefully, your body registers a state of emergency. Your amygdala fires, your sympathetic nervous system kicks into overdrive, cortisol spikes in your bloodstream, and your heart rate actually accelerates because your brain thinks you are drowning or suffocating.
So you're stressing the system.
Exactly. That is not alchemy. That is purely self-induced trauma.
Right, you are violently fighting the body's natural impulse. Alchemy, as I understand it, isn't about fighting the body, it's about optimizing it. So, physiologically, how does one stop the carriage without triggering a hypoxia panic response?
Zixi is achieved through a state of deep, profound, sustained meditation where the body's metabolic rate drops so drastically and oxygen utilization at the cellular level becomes so hyper-efficient that the biological demand for external oxygen intake becomes almost imperceptible.
Wait, really?
Yeah, the lungs literally stop heaving. The gross mechanical bouncing of the carriage ceases. The external respiration quiets down to a near standstill.
I want to make sure I understand the mechanism here. Are we talking about something akin to the Bohr effect, where carbon dioxide tolerance increases, allowing red blood cells to release oxygen more efficiently to the tissues?
That is an excellent modern physiological correlate, yes.
Yes.
By slowing the breath down to the point of near stillness, CO2 levels in the blood rise slightly, which paradoxically allows the cells to absorb oxygen more efficiently.
So you actually get more oxygen by breathing less.
Precisely. But in the Taoist framework, the goal isn't just gas exchange. The goal is to seal in and efficiently circulate internal qi, or vital energy.
So heavy breathing is bad.
Normal, heavy breathing is viewed as a massive expenditure of energy. You are constantly exhausting your vital force through the heavy mechanical labor of working the lung bellows.
It's like putting your smartphone on extreme battery saver mode.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Yeah, if you are lost out in the woods and your phone is at 3%, what do? You don't open up a high-definition video game. You shut down all the background applications. You turn the screen brightness to 0. You turn off the constant Wi-Fi searching.
They conserve every drop.
You stop all the external, exhausting, energy-draining processes. By shutting down that heavy external interface, the mechanical breathing the device, your body preserves a massive amount of core metabolic power.
That analogy perfectly captures the mechanism of Zixi. And this leads us to the culmination of the poem. What happens when you perfectly preserve that core power?
It has to go somewhere.
The energy doesn't just sit stagnant, it condenses, it intensifies. The sources extrapolate on this by analyzing the famous final line of Dumas' poem, "Frosty leaves are redder than February flowers."
The frosty autumn maple leaves are redder, more vibrant than the fresh spring flowers of February. Again, on the surface, just a poignant observation about the beauty of late-stage nature.
But biologically, it is the exact thermodynamic formula for time reversal and anti-aging.
Okay, unpack that. How does red leaves equal time reversal?
In the standard cycle of nature and human biology, spring represents youth, vitality, and the beginning of the cycle. Autumn represents old age, decay, the frost of life moving toward winter and death.
Right, the natural aging process.
But the alchemical truth being encrypted here is about the thermodynamics of preserved energy. When human energy qi is perfectly preserved through the state of Zixi, when the heavy carriage of external respiration stops, it generates an intense, highly refined internal heat.
Ah, so the red of the frosty leaves isn't just a color palette choice, it's a temperature marker. It's a measurement of cellular vitality.
Exactly. The profound physiological truth of this anti-aging blueprint is that if you master this energy conservation, even in the autumn of your physical life, even when your chronological body is old and covered in frost, your cellular vitality, your internal heat, will burn hotter, brighter, and redder than the fleeting, unrefined, easily exhausted energy of your youth.
The spring flowers.
Exactly. You are literally reversing the energetic decay of time.
Okay, let's just sit with that for a second. A beloved 28-character poem about a pleasant evening carriage ride up a mountain is actually a meticulously coded manual for dropping your metabolic rate to a hibernate level efficiency, altering your cellular oxygen uptake, and triggering a thermodynamic reversal of aging.
It is a stunning density of information. But we have to realize that this is just the micro level. Tang poetry gives you the breathing mechanism to start the engine. It teaches you how to generate and preserve the heat.
But heat without circulation is just inflammation.
Exactly. If we want to understand how this massive amount of newly preserved energy actually moves and distributes through the complex network of the human body, we have to look at the macro blueprint. We have to pivot from poetry to architecture.
Which brings us to our second massive source text, a total shift in genre and scale, Dream of the Red Chamber.
A totally different beast.
This is universally acknowledged as one of the greatest novels in Chinese literature, written in the 18th century during the Qing dynasty. It is an absolute behemoth.
It's huge.
It's a sprawling, tragic, hyper-detailed, multi-generational saga about a tremendously wealthy aristocratic family slowly falling into bankruptcy and ruin. And it is mostly set within the walls of an unbelievably lavish, custom-built estate called the Grandview Garden.
It's incredibly detailed.
Yeah, it has hundreds of characters, complex love triangles, political maneuvering, poetry clubs. It is the ultimate classical soap opera.
It is a masterpiece of psychological realism and literary world-building. But our sources reframe this entire 120-chapter epic not as a tragic family drama, but as a staggering, spatially accurate geometric map of the body's deep meridian network.
Okay, a geographic map of the body.
Right. To decode this, we first have to understand the foundational principle the ancient Chinese used to map out both the cosmos and the human body, the concept of round sky, square earth.
Round sky, square earth. I've heard this in relation to ancient Chinese coinage, the round coins with the square holes in the middle. But how does that cosmological concept translate to human anatomy?
In the anatomical blueprint of internal alchemy, the round sky represents the human head, the dome of the skull, which houses the upper spiritual centers.
Okay.
The square earth represents the dense, physical, rectangular mass of the human torso, which houses the visceral organs and the heavy structural elements of our biology. The architecture in the novel is built entirely upon this physiological framework.
So the buildings of the body.
Let's start with the title itself, Dream of the Red Chamber. The term red chamber, or sometimes translated as heavy chamber, depending on the specific esoteric commentary, is not just an architectural description of a wealthy family's home. It is an ancient Taoist anatomical term.
Wait, what does it refer to?
It refers specifically to the 12 rings of cartilage that make up the human trachea, the windpipe.
Wait, I have to push back hard on this. Are the sources genuinely claiming that the title of this sweeping, romantic, tragic masterpiece is literally Dream of the Windpipe?
I know, it sounds a bit much.
That feels incredibly reductive, or like we are retroactively forcing a medical textbook onto a piece of fiction. Why couldn't Cao Zhuoken, the author, just be describing a literal red room, which was standard for aristocratic daughters of the time?
It is a totally valid skepticism, and you have to demand proof for a claim that bold. The sources substantiate this by pointing to the exact terminology used in definitive Taoist texts like the Qingming Gizi principles of innate nature and life force.
Okay, so the terminology is documented.
Yes. In these texts, the 12-story heavy chamber is the standard fixed jargon for the trachea, the passageway of breath. And remember, what did we just learn from Tang poetry? Breath is the carriage of life and death.
Oh, wow. It connects back to the breath.
The novel explicitly centers around themes of breath, sighing, illness, and the eventual expiration of the characters. Broadly speaking, the red chamber symbolizes the heavy, dense blood and flesh reality of the human physical body.
So the whole novel is about being trapped in a physical body.
The ultimate tragedy of the novel is the tragedy of being trapped inside this mortal, decaying physical structure, dreaming that the physical world is permanent.
Okay, so if the red chamber is the overarching metaphor for the dense physical body, what is the Grandview Garden? This is the massive, opulent, walled-off landscape where the teenage protagonists live away from the corrupting influence of the adults.
Right, it's their sanctuary.
And it's described in agonizing, almost obsessive detail in the book. Every single pavilion, every winding stream, every rockery, every bamboo grove is mapped out.
Because the Grandview Garden is the most precise, complex map of the internal energy network ever committed to paper. The architectural layout of the garden, the specific placement of the water features versus the stone structures, and interestingly, the 120-chapter mathematical structure of the novel itself perfectly simulates an ancient energetic grid called the Luo Shu matrix.
The Luo Shu matrix. I've seen diagrams of this in the source materials. It looks like a grid of dots connected by lines, almost like a constellation.
It's an ancient mathematical and divinatory diagram, deeply tied to the I Ching, the Book of Changes. Think of it as a 3x3 magic square.
Like a Sudoku grid.
Kind of. If you arrange the numbers 1 through 9 in this 3x3 grid in a specific order, every single row, column, and diagonal adds up to the exact same number 15.
Oh, that's fascinating.
It represents a state of perfect, dynamic, interlinking mathematical balance. In this ancient matrix, the center number is always 5. And in the Taoist internal map, based on 5 elements theory, that center point, the number 5, represents the spleen and stomach.
Which is the core.
Yes, it's considered the energetic core, the earth center of the human torso.
So the entire physical layout of the Grandview Garden is an architectural schematic of our internal organs, centered around the digestive and energetic core.
Exactly. And here is where the encryption becomes breathtaking in its detail. The sources point out that the literal routes the characters take when they walk through the garden are not just random literary staging.
They're walking specific paths.
Yeah. When the main character, Ji Baoyu, walks from his courtyard to his cousin Lin Dayu's pavilion, or when the characters gather to host a poetry banquet by the central lake, the paths they walk strictly trace the flow of qi through what are called the 8 extraordinary meridians.
Let's define that for the listener, because we hear the word meridians thrown around a lot in acupuncture, but the 8 extraordinary ones seem like a different category entirely.
They are. In traditional Chinese medicine, you have the 12 standard meridians. Think of these as the surface streets of your energy system. They handle the daily routine traffic of your organs.
The local roads.
Right. But the 8 extraordinary meridians, like the Ren vessel down the front of the body or the Du vessel up the spine, are the deep foundational reservoirs. They are the massive superhighways buried deep underground.
The interstates.
Exactly. They don't just handle daily digestion. They govern your core vitality, your genetic strength, your deepest levels of consciousness, and the deepest cycles of your life.
And the novel maps these out.
Meticulously. Using the footprints of his characters navigating the garden, the flow of water in the garden maps to the conception vessel, the Ren Mai, while the harsh, jagged artificial rockeries map to the governing vessel, the Du Mai, running up the spine.
Okay, this is phenomenal world building, but here is where it gets really interesting and honestly a little confusing from a practical standpoint.
How so?
If the garden is our body and the characters walking around are the vital energy flowing through our deep superhighways, what is the story actually telling us to do with this information? Because the narrative of Dream of the Red Chamber is incredibly bleak.
It is a tragedy, yeah.
It's about hoarding wealth, obsession with social status, everyone gets horribly sick, the family goes completely bankrupt, and the main characters die of literal broken hearts and consumption. It sounds like a catalog of heavy, toxic baggage. It doesn't sound like an uplifting health manual.
You've just hit on the absolute core logic of the book's alchemical lesson. The secret of Dream of the Red Chamber and how it differs from other texts is that it is a passive, subtractive blueprint.
Subtractive?
Yes. It's teaching you what not to do by showing you the catastrophic biological consequences of energetic congestion.
A subtractive blueprint. Explain the mechanics of that. How do you cultivate energy by subtracting?
Look at the physical structure of the red chamber, the human body. It is heavy, it is dense, it is filled with flesh and blood. The novel argues that our deep meridian superhighways, those 8 extraordinary vessels, are naturally dormant, blocked, or congested in almost all adults.
Why are they blocked?
Because we have filled our internal architecture with too much stuff.
Stuff meaning emotions, stress, worldly ambitions.
Precisely. In the novel, the ultimate corrupting force is attachment to what they call gold. Gold represents secular materialism, greed, status anxiety, political ambition, and intense romantic obsession.
All the drama of life.
Right. The characters are so weighed down by their attachments, their resentments, their desperate desire to control their physical and social environment that their energy stagnates. They literally become sick and die because their internal architecture is congested with emotional and material hoarding.
So the biological lesson here isn't to build more energy, it's radical internal decluttering.
Yes. To unblock the sleeping meridians, the reader must shatter the illusion of the physical body's permanence. You have to realize that the red chamber is just a temporary vessel, a fleeting dream.
Let it go.
You have to actively practice the art of letting go of your attachment to gold, whatever that gold is in your modern life. It might be chronic stress over your mortgage, lingering anger at your boss, or a toxic obsession with your social media status.
It's all just junk clogging the pipes.
Exactly. Only by passively, continuously emptying this congested internal architecture can your deep life energy, your qi, instantly rush in and flow freely through those 8 extraordinary meridians. You don't have to force the energy to flow, you just have to remove the blockages.
That feels incredibly relevant to where modern science is right now. I mean, think about the explosive rise of psychosomatic medicine today.
Oh, there are massive parallels.
We are constantly hearing neuroscientists and immunologists talk about how chronic emotional stress, holding on to anxiety and unresolved trauma, doesn't just stay in your head. It physically manifests as literal tension in the fascial network.
It gets trapped in the tissue.
Right. It causes systemic inflammation. It completely wrecks our autonomic nervous system balance. We are literally choking off our own biological superhighways with our psychological attachments.
It is the exact same biomechanical principle.
Right.
The ancient Taoists just mapped the fascial tension and nervous system burnout onto a sprawling 120-chapter architectural tragedy.
So you heal the body by removing the mental blockages.
You passively clear the pathways through surrender, through recognizing the impermanence of the stressors and letting go. You empty the garden so the energy can circulate.
Okay, so Dream of the Red Chamber teaches us the vital art of passive clearing. We empty the house so the air can flow.
That's the first step, yes.
But what happens when passive surrender simply isn't enough? What happens when our energy is actively being attacked, drained, and depleted by hostile external forces, and we need to fight back?
Then we need a different strategy.
Exactly. And that brings us to our third massive source text, Journey to the West. And let me tell you, if Red Chamber is a quiet, tragic, minimalist meditation, Journey to the West is an absolute blockbuster action movie.
It is relentless action.
We trade the weeping aristocrats in the garden for a mythical monkey wielding a 10,000-pound iron staff.
It is a profound shift in narrative tone, and an equally profound shift in the alchemical blueprint. If Red Chamber is about passive surrender and clearing space, Journey to the West is a 100-chapter, highly aggressive, tactical, militaristic battle for human energy.
Let's set the stage for the listener real quick. The basic plot of Journey to the West follows a very pious, somewhat naive monk named Tang Sunzeng, who is traveling from China to India to retrieve sacred Buddhist scriptures.
The core quest.
Right. But he can't possibly survive the journey alone because literally every demon, monster, and evil spirit in the world wants to ambush him, capture him, and eat him.
He's a walking target.
So the heavens provide him with supernatural bodyguards, the most famous being Sun Wukong, the Monkey King. It's basically an epic road trip filled with endless, violent monster fights.
But once again, we are not looking at a literal fantasy road trip. We are looking at a highly structured psychological and physiological metaphor. The entire traveling party and the monsters they fight represent a single, enclosed, internal human ecosystem.
Okay, lay out the cast of this internal ecosystem for us. Who represents what organ or energy?
Let's start with the central figure, the Tang monk. In the alchemical blueprint, he represents the pure, uncorrupted, original yang qi.
Original yang qi, what does that mean exactly?
This is the ultimate pristine life force. It is the genetic gold mine of your vitality, the energy you are born with before the world wears you down. It is pure, it is essential, but it is also incredibly vulnerable and naive. It doesn't know how to protect itself from the world.
And everyone wants a piece of it. The monsters in the story are constantly trying to kidnap the monk, boil him in a cauldron, and eat his flesh, because the lore of the story says that eating the Tang monk will grant you immortality.
Precisely. And what do those monsters actually represent? They aren't just scary beasts hiding in caves along the Silk Road. They are literal physiological representations of internal energy leaks.
Energy leaks, explain that.
Our sources dive deeply into this psychological metaphor. The various monsters, the spider demons, the bone spirits, the bull demon kings, symbolize our own psychological defects.
Our own inner demons, literally.
Exactly. They represent chronic anger, sexual lust, insatiable greed, arrogance, as well as the external environmental stressors that constantly drain our life force. Every single time the team encounters a monster in the story, it represents the human body encountering a situation, an emotion, or a stressor that threatens to drain its core vitality, its original yang qi.
So if the Tang monk is the body's central bank, holding all the wealth of our genetic vitality, the monsters are basically emotional hackers.
That's a great way to put it.
They are constantly probing the firewall, trying to drain the funds through phishing scams of anger, lust, and greed. Like, click here to get enraged by this political argument, and boom, your energy account is drained.
That is a brilliant modern way to phrase it. They are emotional hackers. And the book illustrates in granular detail how the emotional states of the characters directly dictate the physical flow of their internal energy fields, their qi aura.
It's all connected.
In this alchemical blueprint, emotional stability isn't just about being a stoic, pleasant person to be around. It is the primary, non-negotiable biological defense mechanism required to guard the body's energy core.
Give me a specific example of how the story demonstrates this biological breach. How does an emotion literally let a monster in?
Think about the narrative pattern of almost every chapter. What happens right before a monster successfully attacks or kidnaps the monk? Usually the Tang monk gets paralyzed by unnecessary fear, or his other disciple, Zubaji the pig, gives in to gluttony or sexual lust.
Or the monkey gets mad.
Right. Even the Monkey King himself gets arrogant and throws a fit of rage. The exact moment a character loses their temper, gives in to base desire, or panics, their internal psychological harmony shatters.
The shield drops.
Biologically, their sympathetic nervous system spikes, their focus scatters, and their energetic shield drops. And that is the exact millisecond. The monster representing disease, fatigue, or cellular damage is able to slip past the defenses and capture the core vitality.
Wow. So, according to this text, getting furious in traffic or obsessing over a slight at work isn't just a bad mood. It is a literal, measurable breach in your biological security system that allows the monsters of physical exhaustion and cellular degradation to rush in and feed on your life force.
Exactly. Recognizing those leaks, realizing that your passing emotions have physical mass and severe energetic consequences is the first critical step.
You have to know you're leaking.
But recognizing the leaks is only half the battle. Once you know you are under attack and your energy is draining, passive surrender won't save you. You have to actively fight back and reclaim the energy.
Time to go on the offensive.
And for that, we turn to the hero of the story, Sun Wukong, the Monkey King, who provides us with a radical, active method for entirely reversing the flow of biological energy.
This is the part I have been waiting for. The sources refer to Sun Wukong's specific cultivation law as the Xianmi Yuan Tong Zen Miaoju, which sounds unbelievably epic.
It really does.
And the sources frame this not just as some vague Taoist philosophy, but as a highly aggressive, active alchemical execution guide. It's a literal step-by-step manual for the nervous system.
It is intensely specific. Let's systematically break down this ancient text into a scientific, physiological process, exactly as the source material lays it out. It is a three-step execution blueprint for building an internal power generator.
Walk me through it. Step 1.
Step 1 is defend the vault, or, in the precise words of the text, strictly guard against the leakage of Jing Shin's Qi energy and Shen spirit.
This sounds exactly like what we were just talking about with the emotional hackers and the monsters.
It is. It is the absolute baseline defense mechanism. Before you can even attempt to build massive power, you have to stop bleeding power. You have to patch the holes in the bucket.
Otherwise, what's the point?
Exactly. This means rigorously managing your sensory inputs, controlling your emotional reactions, and preserving your physical essence. If you don't secure the vault first, steps 2 and 3 are completely useless and potentially dangerous. You cannot build a stable fire in the middle of a hurricane.
Okay, the vault is locked. We are emotionally regulated. The hackers are blocked. Step 2.
Step 2, build the internal energy bridge. The text gives literal, physical, biological instructions for creating a closed internal circuit to connect the upper and lower energetic channels of the body.
Wait, literal instructions. What are we actually supposed to do with our physical bodies here?
Anatomically, it involves 2 very specific physical actions. First, placing the tongue flat against the roof of the mouth, just behind the upper teeth. In the alchemical text, this is called closing the upper opening, or shin.
Tongue on the roof of the mouth. Okay.
Second, gently engaging, lifting, and sealing the perineum, the pelvic floor muscles. This is closing the lower opening, or mei.
Tongue on the roof of the mouth, engage the pelvic floor. It sounds like something you'd hear in a modern Pilates class or some high-end bioenergetics workshop.
It's an ancient technique, but very relevant today.
What is the actual biomechanical mechanism here? Why those 2 specific spots?
It is a profound physiological biohack. In the Taoist map, the front of the body is governed by the Ren meridian, the conception vessel, which flows down, and the back of the body is governed by the Du meridian, the governing vessel, which flows up the spine.
The interstates from earlier.
Right. Normally, in an uncultivated person, these 2 massive superhighways are disconnected at the mouth and the pelvic floor. Energy leaks out.
The circuit is open.
By closing the upper and lower switches, stimulating the cranial nerves with the tongue, and engaging the deep fascial network of the pelvic floor, you physically bridge the gap. You allow the nervous system and the internal energy to flow in a continuous, unbroken microscopic orbit up the spine and down the front.
You are literally wiring the circuit board to handle higher voltage.
Perfectly said.
Okay, the circuit is wired. We've locked the vault. We've connected the cables. The energy is looping instead of leaking. Step 3. The sources call this the climax of the alchemy.
Step 3 is the 5 elements reversal. This is where the practice becomes highly advanced and deeply transformative.
What are we reversing?
To understand the reversal, we first have to understand the normal default state of human physiology according to the ancient map. In the Taoist 5 elements framework, heart fire is located in the upper body, in the chest, and kidney water is located in the lower body, in the abdomen and the renal system.
Fire up top, water down below.
Right. And naturally, in the physical world, what does fire do? It burns upward.
It rises.
Think of how you physically feel when you are stressed, angry, or anxious. Your face flushes red, your chest feels tight, your thoughts race uncontrollably, your blood pressure spikes.
That panic feeling.
That is heart fire blazing up and escaping out of the top of your head. It is entirely wasted energy. And what does water naturally do? It flows downward.
So it's dropping.
Kidney water represents your deep vitality, your reproductive essence, your foundational life force. When it constantly flows down and out of the body, it results in profound fatigue, rapid aging, and the eventual loss of life force.
So normally, in our default stressed out state, we are constantly losing energy in both directions simultaneously. The fire goes up and evaporates into anxiety, and the water goes down and drains away into exhaustion. We are just bleeding out from both ends.
Exactly. We are exhausting our biology. So Sun Wukong's radical alchemical step is to forcefully reverse the elements.
Forcefully reverse them.
In deep, focused meditation, utilizing the bridge circuit you just built with your tongue and pelvic floor, you use your intention and diaphragmatic breath to actively push the hot, volatile heart fire down into the lower abdomen.
Pushing the fire down.
At the exact same time, you pull the cool, vital kidney water up.
Physically, how on earth do you push fire down and pull water up? Are we talking about a visualization exercise, or is there an actual physical mechanism happening here?
It starts as visualization, but it results in actual physiological changes. By focusing your mind intensely on your lower abdomen, the dantian, while breathing deeply, you stimulate the vagus nerve, which drops your heart rate, calming the heart fire.
Ah, nervous system regulation.
Right. The deep diaphragmatic pressure literally massages the lower organs and increases blood flow to the pelvic region, warming the kidney water. You are using nervous system routing to change regional blood flow and temperature.
I love the analogy the sources use to crystallize this concept, because it makes this highly complex biophysics so instantly clear. It's the simplest, most powerful image. It is like putting a fire under a pot of water.
Yes, the boiling water analogy. It is the absolute core visual of internal alchemy.
If the fire is above the water, which is our normal stressed state, absolutely nothing happens. They just separate and dissipate. But when you force the fire under the water, you boil it. The water turns into pure, powerful steam.
And that steam is the magic.
And in this biological blueprint, that steam is pure, highly refined ki. Because you've closed the circuits, that steam shoots up the spine, up the meridian, directly into the brain. You are literally building a nuclear particle accelerator inside your torso.
That's exactly what it is.
You are making these fundamental biological elements collide at high speeds in a confined space to burst forth with reality-altering power, massive neurogenesis, and boundless vitality.
It is a stunning, breathtaking conceptualization of internal physiology. Let's briefly synthesize the core differences of the three works we've looked at, because together they offer a complete, comprehensive toolkit for human optimization.
Yes, let's recap the three blueprints and how they interact.
Tang poetry provides the ignition switch. It teaches us how to stop the carriage, to use the breath to shift the nervous system, drop the metabolic rate, and conserve the initial spark of energy.
The starting point.
Dream of the Red Chamber teaches us to clear the highway. It is a passive blueprint of subtraction, emptying the mind and body of attachments to unblock the deep meridian superhighways so the energy actually has somewhere to go.
Clearing the junk.
And finally, Journey to the West puts us in the driver's seat of a sports car at light speed. It is the active, aggressive mechanism of closing the physical circuits and reversing the elements to boil the water and generate massive, transformative power.
Ignition, clearing the road, and hitting the gas. It's a flawless, complete system. But this brings me to my biggest, most pragmatic question.
I think I know what it is.
I guarantee it's the question anyone listening right now is asking themselves. So what does this all mean for me? We aren't ancient Taoist monks living in misty mountain temples.
We live in the modern world.
Right. We are modern people with incredibly stressed out lives, demanding jobs, kids, mortgages, and constant digital bombardment. How do we take these epic classical concepts, particle accelerators and meridian superhighways, and actually apply them to our modern biology today? Can we actually use this ancient literature for daily stress relief and anti-aging?
We absolutely can, and we really must. Because while our environment has changed drastically, human biology, the nervous system, the fascial network, the endocrine system hasn't changed at all.
The hardware is the same.
Exactly. To bridge these ancient texts with modern neurobiology, we have to look at the foundational requirement that the sources say is absolutely necessary for all these blueprints to work. It is an overarching philosophy called the Wu-Wei reading method.
Wu-Wei. I've heard that translated in various ways, usually as non-doing or effortless action.
Yes. In the context of reading these physiological manuals and applying them to life, Wu-Wei means not getting violently caught up in the drama of the narrative.
Staying detached.
In biological terms, applying Wu-Wei is the exact literal mechanism of switching your autonomic nervous system from the sympathetic state, the fight-or-flight anxiety, the cortisol-drenched reality of the modern world, to the parasympathetic state, the rest and digest, cellular healing state.
So translating the scenes of these books into our daily cultivation means we need to stop getting dragged into the anxious plot of our daily lives. The literal story of our day, the traffic, the emails, the arguments, is just the surface illusion. We need to start reading the energy flow beneath it.
Exactly. When your boss sends a passive-aggressive email at 4:00 p.m. on a Friday, that is just the plot.
It's part of the story.
In the alchemical framework, that email is an emotional hacker. It is a monster trying to steal your tang monk, your core vitality.
Yeah.
If you react with immediate rage and panic, your heart fire flares up, your energy scatters, your shield drops, and the monsters win.
They steal the chi.
Applying Wu-Wei means observing the plot, reading the email, without letting it dictate your internal physiology. You witness the stressor, but you refuse to let it alter your heart rate.
Okay, I want to make this as relentlessly actionable as possible for the listener. Based strictly on the source materials and the specific texts we've discussed today, let's organize this into a simple daily sequence.
Let's do it.
Not just a philosophical idea, but a physiological routine. Let's build a 10-minute energy management practice based on these three masterpieces.
A practical daily integration of the ancient blueprints.
We start with Dumu's poetry. We have to stop the carriage.
Right. Find a quiet place to sit still for just a few minutes. Do not force your breath. Do not try to control it aggressively. Simply let the external breathing quiet down naturally.
Just observe it.
Shift out of the mechanical, bouncing, heaving rhythm of your daily stress. Allow the breath to become so shallow and subtle that you can barely feel it. Shift entirely out of fight or flight and let the heat begin to gather.
You are putting the body on extreme battery saver mode. Then we move to dream of the red chamber. We have to clear the garden.
Once you are physically still and the carriage has stopped, you must clear the internal architecture. Passively, gently let go of your racing thoughts, your material anxieties, your attachment to the gold of the day.
Let it all drop.
Visualize your dense internal space emptying out. Feel the physical tension leaving your fascia, allowing your deep meridian superhighways to unblock and open up.
Declutter the mind to relax the tissue. Then we channel our inner monkey from Journey to the West. We build the bridge.
Engage the physical circuits. Place the tip of your tongue gently on the roof of your mouth, right behind your upper teeth. Gently engage and slightly lift the pelvic floor, the perineum.
The upper and lower switches.
You have now physically closed the circuit, bridging the Ren and Du vessels. You have sealed the vault, so the energy cannot leak.
But the monsters will still attack, right, during the meditation.
They absolutely will. As you sit in this connected state, emotions will inevitably arise. Stress about a deadline, anger about a past conversation, anxiety about the future.
Part of being human?
Recognize them immediately, not as ultimate reality, but as monsters trying to leak your energy. Observe them using Wu-Wei. Do not react. Do not let the energy shield drop. Let the monster pass by the monk without taking a bite.
And finally, the climax, the particle accelerator.
With the circuit closed and the emotional monsters held at bay, visualize the heat of your racing mind, your volatile heart fire, moving down your body to warm your lower core.
Push it down.
Imagine the cool, sluggish, exhausted energy of your lower body, your kidney water, being heated by that descending fire. Feel it turning into rising, vitalizing steam that travels up your spine, bathing your brain in fresh, highly refined energy.
Fire underwater. You know, it is incredibly validating and almost humbling to see how practical this is. We tend to think of biohacking as this very modern Silicon Valley invention.
Oh, we definitely do.
We think it requires ice baths, infrared saunas, and hundreds of dollars of expensive supplements. But ancient literature practically invented biohacking. They just used poetry, architectural metaphors, and mythology to map it out.
The tools and the vocabulary change, but the fundamental human nervous system remains exactly the same. These scholars understood something profound, that the stories we tell ourselves, the exact words we speak, and the way we direct our internal attention literally shape our biology at a cellular level.
And that is the true, staggering magic of this deep dive. We started by looking at a stack of old, dusty books, and we ended up with a mathematically precise, coded survival guide.
A guide for living.
A guide meant to protect our core energy, map our hidden biological highways, and build an internal engine for limitless longevity. It makes you realize that true transcendent literature doesn't just describe life, it literally sustains it.
It doesn't just entertain you, it gives you the instruction manual to rebuild yourself.
As we wrap up this journey, I'm thinking about everything we've uncovered, but I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to mull over.
If I may, I'd like to offer that final thought, zooming out from the individual to the collective. We've spent this entire time talking about personal longevity, about using these alchemical blueprints to heal our own individual nervous systems.
Right.
But if you scale this up, if a single human body is a garden that requires subtraction to function, and if unchecked heart fire leads to biological exhaustion, what does this alchemical blueprint imply about the life cycle of entire modern civilizations?
Oh, wow.
We currently live in a global society that runs entirely on endless external consumption, massive material attachment, and chronic blazing heart fire in the form of constant outrage and hyperproductivity.
That's a terrifying parallel.
Are we, as a species, currently leading out our collective kidney water? And if so, what would a planetary level 5 elements reversal even look like?
That is a staggering thought. Are we the monsters draining our own world's energy vault? Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. I highly encourage you to go look at the classic books sitting on your shelf right now. I guarantee you will look at them a little differently from now on. Until next time, keep your fire under your water.